Okay, well, the weed pot that we're going to do today, or bud vase, it can be either way, is about 7 inches tall, and it's a design that I've been making for several years now. I sell these at craft shows, and I get usually $10 or $15 for them with the tube inserted into them. The raw material for it is pretty hard to come by. It's pieces of limb from a maple tree that we took down about 5 years ago. I cut up it, into billet sizes and sealed the ends on it, and by now it should be pretty dry. A lot of these are turned out of green lumber or green stock, and the one problem that I've had with turning them out of green stock is that the moisture in the wood will swell when you're drilling it, and then it'll contract. And I actually have had a couple of them that have broken the glass tubes. So the drier the wood, usually the better, and the less chance you have of cracking. I'm going to put a tenon on one end first. By the way, that's why you wear a face shield. You do have to remember to put the face shield down, however. By the way, this is a little tool that I whipped up myself some time ago. It's a tenon marker. It's got two screws through it. One of them marks the size for the tenon, and the other one marks the size for the recess if I want to go inside of a bowl or a piece. It just makes it a little bit easier to get a tenon that's the right size for the chuck that I'm using. Oh, checking for a little bark inclusion here. Sometimes, if you are lucky, you'll get bark inclusions or features in the wood that you'll be able to save that actually add character to the little pieces. I've found that the ones that have bark inclusions and colorization or colorization tend to sell better than the ones that are just plain. So I try to keep stuff like this in if I can. I'm going to true up the business end here. By the way, I'm using a bidan to true up. Bidan is kind of like a big parting tool. Okay. Rough dimensions on this are, it's about 7 inches tall, I believe. And for layout on these things, there's a little device that I've been using for a long time. Actually, I started using one of these when I was, before I started turning, I did furniture construction and laying out furniture design and stuff, something called a Fibonacci gauge. It is, some people call it the golden mean. What it does is it gives you a way to calculate the dimensions that are pleasing to the eye. In this case, I'm going to shorten up a little bit, like about so. And that, for this particular design, I'm putting a waistband in. That's basically just a bead. I'm going to check the diameter that I'm getting down to here. One of the things that a mistake that I made when I first started turning these is I would do too much of the design on the outside. And when I drill the hole, I hadn't left enough thickness in here to hold the thing together. I've had some of them come apart. So what you want to do is get the diameter of the tube that you'll be using, and then give yourself, maybe a 1/4 of an inch on each side or a 1/2 inch. These tubes that we're using today, or that I'm using, are 1 inch in diameter, or about 1 inch in diameter. They're actually a metric size that's close to an inch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this down so that my waistband is about 1.5 inches. That gives me enough material inside so that I know my drill bit's not going to come through it. Okay, we're pretty close there. So now I can go ahead and start shaping my vase. Yeah, that was a catch. In case anybody didn't recognize it, I know you guys never get them, so. Okay, we're going to leave the outside as it is for just a minute and drill a hole in it. Yeah, you know, you never know what you're going to find inside them. Sometimes it can be kind of nice, and yeah. Yeah. Oh, oh I have had tubes break. Oh yeah. I had one that I was really proud of because it had, nice figure and the grain was really pretty in it. I went ahead and finished it all and put the tube in it and set it up on the shelf. A couple days later, I moved it around and there was a little tinkle in there. And, it's not supposed to do that, but it did. Uh, I'm sorry? No. We'll get to the finish in a couple of minutes. I have a little bit different approach maybe than some people, but it's actually a finishing technique that I learned from a member of our club. We'll use that as a little teaser. Oh, well, the wood, especially green wood, is going to move. You cannot stop it. There's no finish. There's nothing you can do that's going to prevent the wood from moving. And so I think you would have a pretty high probability if you were to use an epoxy-like finish like that or a bar top finish, that the finish would crack. Just a guess. I've never tried it, so. On drilling the hole size, no matter what size bit you have, you'll probably be wrong. This is a 1-inch bit. I measured the tube at in the tube is something like forget how many millimeters it is, but the tube is it measures out just slightly less than 1 inch, which you would think that if a 1-inch bit were being used, that this tube would fit right in. And if you're going into dry stock, like a piece of plywood or something like that, the tube will drop right down into it, no problem. With this, I guarantee you that it won't. What's going to happen is the wood's going to swell as I drill it. And the faster you're going, the faster you're drilling, the more heat that builds up and the more swelling you get. So I've got the lathe running at about 200 RPMs now. That's about where I would drill with a 1-inch Forstner bit. Mm-hmm. And I got a little bit off center there. So what I'm going to do is try to recenter it. Yeah, even a Forstner bit will try to follow the grain of the wood. And this is going to be off center just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to cause me a problem. I think I've got enough meat in here that I'll be able to get past it. Yeah, that works. It does. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, ordinarily, that's a good point. In my own shop, I would not have started with the extension on. I would have started with as short a bit as I could. And the truth of the matter is, not necessarily on a project like this, but on most of the stuff that I'm drilling, I'll use a starter bit that a machinist would use about that long, and they have an exact point in them, uh, and you get a lot truer hole that way. Yep. That bit is getting hot. It's turning blue. I'm drilling too deep with it, but keep reaching for stuff in my pocket that's not there. When you get done drilling, you feel this. It's pretty warm on the outside. It's really warm on the inside. I'm going to let it cool for just a second here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I assembled this, at home. That's the depth I want to go. And it doesn't fit. It doesn't want to go. What do we do now? Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. Uh, well, I don't know if you're really supposed to do this or not, and I'm sure the safety police would probably come after me for this. Yes. Yeah, this is the bit you'd use for pepper mills. Yeah. I don't know, maybe I haven't looked the right places, but has anybody had any luck finding metric bits readily available around town here? You know of any place, Al? Yeah, I metrics? Huh. What's that? Really? Yeah? Oh, okay. Huh. It's just does not want to go. I, I, I think it's the tubes that Tim got. I think they're the wrong size or something. So, well, you get the drift anyway. Yeah, let's see what happens when we blow it out. It doesn't act like there's that much in there. Yeah. Yeah. We'll give it one more shot here, and then we'll move on to finishing this thing. It might, but it might make it harder to hold on to the chuck. Actually, that made it worse. So, Uh, air pressure is pretty low, but there's no sawdust moving out of there. So, well, let's pretend that it fits the way this one does. There, this one was done exactly the same way, out of the same limb. So, uh, it's quite possible that the bit's heated up enough that it may not be drilling. I don't know. And this bit is still pretty hot, even though I've had it uh, out of the hole for quite a while. Yes, I will. Yeah, I do recess it just a little bit. That's the next thing we're going to do here. like the color of this. That was a piece of Formica or countertop. You know, if you go to Menards and tell them that you're thinking about putting a countertop in your kitchen, they'll give you a lifetime supply of it, no problem. Um, yep. You also, if you have a drum sander, you can also make it pretty much any thickness you want. Pete does the basket illusion pieces, and I've done a few, nowhere near as many as he has, but I I picked up some Formica stock and a pretty good sized piece of it, cut off from a cabinet shop, and ran it through the drum sander and got it down to a thickness that I wanted to work with, and it works pretty well. It holds up better than a lot of other things that you could use. I think we're ready to sand this. I don't think we want to do a lot of sanding because of the sawdust in the air here. But if your finish cuts are good enough, and especially if your wood is in a nice straight grain like this, sanding shouldn't be too much of a problem. Mike asked about finish a little while ago. For most of these, the ones that I've done, I've actually used lacquer as a finish. And this is a thing that I learned a long time ago from Tom Carlson, one of our other members. I was out at Tom's shop one day, and he was showing me how to do these and how to do mushrooms. He turned a lot of mushrooms that he sold at craft shows and stuff every year. And when he got it turned, he did just a little bit of sanding on it, and the next thing he comes out with a jar with a brush sticking out of the top of it. And I asked him, I said, "What is that?" And he said, "It's lacquer." And he's running the lathe at about 300 or 400 RPMs. He slathers on some lacquer, and then he takes a paper towel while the lacquer's still wet, cranks up the speed, and the lacquer becomes a friction polish. And it took him maybe 30 seconds to finish that piece. And before that, I had been, using polyurethane, and I would give it a coat, wait 2 hours, give it another coat maybe, or wait another couple hours until I got a finish that I was satisfied with. And he was getting the same or better quality finish in less than a minute. So, what I've been using lately is a product from Doctor's Wood Shop. It's called Pins Plus, and it's actually shellac based. It has some other ingredients in it, but it's a friction polish that actually does about the same thing that you can do with a lacquer. The advantage in this is that it doesn't have any noxious fumes. You really can't smell much of it at all when you're putting it on. So I kind of have gotten to like it. This was finished with that, and the two over on the in the gift with lacquer a couple of years ago. To get them off the lathe, you could come up with jam chuck or reverse chucking of some kind, but these are fairly low end turnings. You want these to sit flat, but you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on them. So what I do is I will relieve a little bit more of the base here to get a tool in there, and then cut them at an angle with a thin parting tool. Okay. And that's it. Insert the tube and find your weeds or flowers or whatever you want, your live flowers, and put them in it. Pardon? No, sir. Do not. If that tube breaks on you, and if it's glued in, you got glass in there that you have to contend with. So, in all of mine, the tubes are all loose in there. And you'll find, by the way, the two that are over on the in the gallery, I think those tubes are probably pretty tight in there. I don't think they're going to come out. So, I'm going to pass that one around. And this one will be here if anybody wants to come up and take a look at it.